So another mark or characteristic of a Christ follower is someone that's able to lead others the way that Jesus did so that they in turn can lead others. It's what we call the journey of discipleship tool. This is based upon countless accounts throughout the Gospels of how Jesus discipled the men and women in his life. And he brought them into an even fuller expression of the kingdom of God, and how he helped them grow and learn and develop and become transformed where they became difference makers. So let's draw out a tool now that can help us remember and apply to our lives and ultimately know how to share this teaching with other people. As with the other tools, I'm going to encourage you to draw this out as I walk through it, all right? So the journey of discipleship tool helps us to visually understand and portray, what it means, what do I need to go through when I'm learning any new skill, or when someone else, I'm trying to help them learn a new skill. It could be a character skill, it could be a competency skill, it could be a spiritual or a vocational skill or a recreational skill. This tool represents what my posture needs to be if I'm leading you and trying to disciple you or help you be a learner, as well as what my posture should be as a leader. It also shows us the posture that is needed for the person that's really being mentored, being discipled, being developed, being trained. This tool represents how Jesus developed the men and women in his life. It is a major factor why the movement of Jesus has continued to expand for the last 2,000 years. Ken Blanchard, a noted leadership author back in the 20th century, wrote a fantastic book called The Leadership Lessons of Jesus. And in it, he said that Jesus' use of situational leadership helps us think through what making a disciple is all about. And there are really 4 quadrants I want to introduce to you that will help us do that. They show how to lead where someone has high confidence or high enthusiasm, or where they have low confidence and low enthusiasm, where they have low competence or low experience, and where they have high competence or high experience. All of those things right there, we're going to kind of calibrate together. So let's talk about the first stage. The first stage of this is what's called unconscious incompetence. It's where someone has high confidence, they're really enthusiastic, but they got low competence and they've got low experience. They have unconscious competence. They don't know what they really need to know. So imagine a kid watching their parents drive a car, and they are excited about being able to drive that car. They don't know what it takes to learn how to drive a car. They're just excited, they're enthusiastic about it, but they don't have any experience in it. So they're in unconscious incompetence. So I'm just using the driving metaphor that can apply across the board, no matter what skill we're trying to teach or train or disciple people in. Then, after a period of time, what you want to do is start giving them some experience with it. This would be called conscious incompetence. It's where someone has low confidence and because they have low experience. So again, let's go back to our car analogy. So I was real excited, enthusiastic about learning to drive a car, took a driving course, I did all that, and then I went out and started driving a car on my own. In the first couple of weeks, I flipped my car upside down twice in ditches on sandy roads, okay? So all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? This isn't as easy as I first thought it was. Now, up here, I don't know what I don't know. Down here, I now know what I don't know. That's called conscious incompetence. Let's look at the third stage, conscious competence. It's where you begin to grow both in your competence and in your experience. Your enthusiasm and your experience is growing. Your confidence and competence is starting to build. So again, let's go back to the car analogy. What a kid is doing is they're moving from, okay, now I know what I don't know. Now I begin knowing what I do know, where I create a checklist. Do you remember the first time you started driving a car on your own? Kind of create a checklist of check both the side mirrors and check the rear view mirror, have hands at 2 and 10 and 2, and be able to drive it, where you had to think through the mechanics of that. You now had a little more experience, but you knew the things that you needed to pay attention to in order to safely arrive at your destination. And then there's the fourth stage of unconscious competence. It's where you do things so naturally and so confidently, you don't even hardly think about it. It's where your enthusiasm and your experience kind of come together. It's where your confidence and your competence are well-founded and secure. So a good example of this is I moved from always having to go through this mental checklist of how to drive a car in a safe manner to all of a sudden, through more experience over time, I start gaining unconscious competence. In other words, I don't even think about what I'm good at. It just comes natural to me. This is why you can get in the car at your house and decide to drive to the mall that's 25 minutes away, and initially you're aware of which street you're turning on, and it's almost like 25 minutes later, you wake up and you're pulling into the parking lot of the mall, and you don't remember driving there because you had unconscious competence that's going on, okay? So let's go back and let's apply this paradigm and summarize how this showed up in the ministry of Jesus. The men and women that were watching him heal and teach and care and serve, things like that, it brought them great excitement because of what they watched. They thought, okay, I want to follow him. I want to be able to be that and do that. At that point, Jesus tells them he's going to give them some experience. His mentality was that, they were now not only to be watching him, but they were to be helping him. He's going to get them involved. That's when he has them get involved. From now, all of a sudden, they're not just listening to him teach. Now he's saying, you help me feed the 5,000. So over time, he then begins to send them out after he's given them some experience. Ultimately, he releases the entire earthly enterprise to all of them we know in the book of Acts because they had gotten to unconscious competence. Now let's add another layer on top of our matrix that represents the journey of discipleship. You'll notice how we're going to demonstrate the posture of a disciple or student and the posture of a leader or discipler and how it shifts with each phase that we see in the life and ministry of Jesus. So let's look at the first stage. So we're going to check this out. We're overlaying this new diagram on top of the one that we just built out. So here in level 1, this is all about having people of peace that you're seeking to disciple. And the people you're seeking to disciple, what you're wanting to do is you want to be a teacher to them, where you say, I'm going to do it and you watch me. Again, Jesus did that. They absorbed what he was doing. And this is the posture of being a listener. Listen and watch what the leader is doing. Begin to anticipate being able to do the same thing they're doing someday. But here would be the posture of someone that is acting as a student in this role. They're going to be a listener. So let's look at the second shift. Second shift is then, as a person's done this in time, we want to move them down here, where there's the posture of leader to disciple is this. I'm going to do it and you help. Notice how we've moved from I do and you watch to now I'm going to do it and you help. That's why I gave the example of Jesus having his disciples help him in feeding the 5,000. Now I'm going to enlist you to move from watching to helping. I want to help you gain some experience in what you are doing. So the posture of a leader is supposed to be that, but the posture of a disciple is becoming more of a loyalist, where I begin to volunteer with you, you help me gain some experience, and I start feeling skin in the game. I feel like, this is not only his deal or her deal, but this is part of my deal. Now, moving from stage 2 to being a loyalist to stage 3 of being a learner, it usually involves going through some sort of difficulty in which they're having to learn something. Sometimes leaders need to introduce a new level of difficulty or the potential for failure to the very one they're discipling. Other times, difficulty will find them on its own and can feel like a pit or what I would call the valley of the shadow of death. Learning whatever one is setting out to do, it often proves to be far more difficult than what you first imagined. But the key is this: if you're leading someone, and what you want to do is to help them stay in this pit long enough in order to mine out the real goal of that experience. So let's just stop with that for a moment. And let me just riff for a few moments here. So Jesus moves from this position. Now his disciples are becoming loyalists, but they are beginning to know what they don't know. So he gives them some experience. I'm going to do it. You're going to help me help feed the 5,000. But along with that, he introduces the possibility of failure. They're like, what if we can't find enough food? What if your prayer doesn't work, right? Those are the kinds of things that can happen. Very often, people, as they're learning a new skill, character skill, competency, spiritual skill, people are going to go through this valley, this dip right here, where, oh my gosh, this is harder than I first thought, okay? And what often happens in church world is churches rely on programs to do this, which most often really don't work like that. Instead, we need to involve them in a process that takes time with us, that gives them grace, where we're able to envision them. Those are the things, grace and envisionment and time, that can move them from D2 over to D3 area, okay? Now, let's look at this third shift. This third shift has to do with the posture of a leader to disciple that says, now you're going to do it, and I'm going to help. I've moved from I do it and you watch, I do it and you help. Now you do it and I'm going to help you, okay? This stage in the Greek is where we get the word disciple. They need to be given some practices that show ever-increasing ownership over what you're giving to them, where you're moving from being the hero to becoming the hero maker in their story. Now, the posture of this disciple at this stage is to be a learner. This is an opportunity to not only absorb more from who's investing in you, but also beginning to apply the training in your personal, your vocational, and your relational life, okay? Then the transition from stage 3 to stage 4 involves a lot of practice. Again, most churches rely on programs to do this. Instead, we need to involve them in specific practices of mastering the tool that we're taking them through, so that they learn from the teaching of the text of Scripture and then they apply it to the training of a tool, okay? And that can help them in their own lives in new ways and help them invest in the lives of other people. And then this fourth stage is at my posture as a leader in helping them is I move from I do and you watch, I do and you help, you do and I help. Now, I want you to do it, and I'm going to cheer you on. I'm going to cheer you on to victory, where you remain in their life in order to encourage them and support them in any way. Again, the posture of a disciple at that point is to become a leader. At this stage, you should now be able to repeat the whole process with someone else. Becoming not only disciples, but disciple makers requires us moving through all 4 of these stages. Spiritual growth primarily happens on the left-hand side of this journey tool. Spiritual multiplication tends to happen more on the right side of this journey tool. So, if I'm working with you and I'm trying to help you learn a new skill, new spiritual skill, relational skill, whatever it might be, check this out. In stage 1, I'm going to act as a communicator to you, as a teacher. I'm going to teach you. But then over time, I need to move you down here where, I do more than that. I become a model. So what I've taught you, watch how I do it, and I want to give you some practice in how to begin to do this with other people. And then over in this third stage, as they gravitate, evolve, and grow, develop toward that, I want to move from the posture of being a teacher to being a model. Now I want to be a coach. Hey, listen, you can do this. Now, I'm still going to be involved with you. I'm still going to help you, but you're going to take increasing amounts of responsibility. And then ultimately, when people shift up into this fourth stage, that's where I want to move from being a coach to being more of a consultant with them. So when we look at this diagram, which of the 4 stages do you tend to excel in the most? Is it stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, or stage 4? Which do you tend to excel in the most? Which stage do you tend to be weakest in? Where is it you can be more intentional about getting better at that particular stage? How can you use this tool to move you from not only teaching people the text of Scripture, but then training them in tools that help them apply it to their lives and challenge others and invest in others? This is what's absolutely essential for us. So for example, for me, I am really good at being a teacher and a model and a coach. I had to learn over time what it means to be a consultant. I know other people in my position, they're really good at stage 1 and stage 4. They're not so good at stages 2 and 3. Now, while all of us will have a strength in one of these 4 areas or a couple of these 4 areas, what we want to do is to recognize where our weakest link is in our leadership, in our discipling, in our training of other people, no matter what the endeavor is, and be able to make sure we're paying attention to all of these. And even to think through the people you're training on your staff, on your team, the marketplace or ministry area, it's always the same thing. I'm going to need to take a person through each of these stages. And one last thing. Sometimes you and I hire people from outside. They haven't come up through our farm system, our training system. We hire people from the outside. And what I want to do is I want to ask them a series of questions to figure out, based upon what their role is to be now in our company, our team, or our ministry, I want to help be able to discern which stage they're at so I can adjust my leadership posture toward them in that. That's called situational leadership. Again, that's exactly what Jesus does. I'm telling you, this journey of discipleship tool has so much rich application. I want you to begin to use it. I want you to begin to draw this out for yourself, begin to draw it out for other people, and then begin to live and lead and disciple with the same pattern of Jesus. And watch what will happen.